Have you ever seen a house in Fullerton that's been sitting a little longer than others and immediately think, yeah, something's wrong with that one? A lot of buyers do that. They see the active days on market and start stacking up, and in their brain goes straight to what am I missing, or what's wrong with it, or why hasn't anybody bought it yet? A few years ago, that reaction made more sense because homes were moving so fast that if something sat around, it stood out in a bad way. But buyers can get this wrong today. Just because a house is sitting a little longer doesn't automatically mean it's a bad house. Some are sitting for real reasons, but some are just overpriced, poorly presented, or got ignored the first weekend and never recovered. In Fullerton, over the last 6 months, the median active days on market for closed homes was 26 days, and the average was 49. So when the property starts to sit a little longer than buyers expect, the real question isn't just what's wrong with it. The real question is, why is this one sitting? Sometimes sellers miss the mark on price. Sometimes photos are bad. Sometimes the house is cluttered. Sometimes the marketing is weak. Sometimes the agent doesn't pick up the phone, or sometimes it's positioned wrong. Sometimes the house itself is fine, but it got passed over because it did not look as polished as the shiny new listings that hit the market that same weekend. That's very different from a house with a bad floor plan, a major deferred maintenance, or a real issue that needs to be resolved. Buyers lump all of that together sometimes, and that can cost them the house that actually fits them best. True story. I had a buyer get pulled into exactly this trap. Every weekend we would go out chasing the shiny penny. La Habra, La Mirada, Fullerton, Anaheim, Buena Park, Placentia. You know the kind of house I mean. Fresh on the market, first open house weekend, stage right, new paint, new floors, new lights. Everything looks sharp. Everything looks exactly like you would like it to look. Those are the houses that get multiple offers fast in this market. So we would go see it, and if they like it, we put an offer in. And then we find out, let's say next Tuesday or Wednesday. And here's the part buyers do not think about sometimes. Once you put an offer in, you're basically tied waiting for an answer. The listing agent legally has 3 days to respond to our offer. But in this market, buyer agents are usually not pushing too hard because they do not want to irritate the seller side. So a lot of times you get a response when you get a response. Meanwhile, your offer is sitting in a stack with other offers for that property. And while you're waiting, the market keeps moving. And if that offer does not get accepted, by the time you get your answer, it's basically the next weekend and you're right back out there chasing the next shiny penny again. We did that for a few weekends before we finally had a talk. We needed to stop doing this and get back to basics. The part of the problem was we were chasing those shiny pennies all over the place instead of literally concentrating around what we wanted. So we had to stop letting the prettiest house on the weekend pull us away from what actually mattered. And that was what they really needed. The right location, the right setup, the right number of rooms, and a house that actually fit how they were going to live. Because a lot of houses are really just dressed up better. New paint, new flooring, new lighting fixtures, maybe cleaned up kitchen, but that does not automatically make it a better house. Sometimes it's still the same old house underneath. The same old bones, same old layout. Sometimes it's the original wiring from 70, 80 years ago, original plumbing that has been there forever, and the house is just packed better for the weekend. So we finally started making appointments to see properties again. We took a break and stopped looking at the prettiest open houses and went back to their real criteria. We could focus on the property that fits their rooms they needed, the location that they wanted, whatever the overall setup was that made sense for their life. So I reached out to these listing agents and got answers up front, figured out who was actually willing to talk, and we were able to negotiate the part that mattered before wasting time or getting emotionally attached to a house or getting emotionally attached to the wrong house, so to speak. For this buyer who put in multiple offers, that changed everything for them. We found the right property, got the offer accepted, closed the deal, and more importantly, it was the right fit for how they actually wanted to live. That's the point of this video. The best house for you is not always the one that looks the prettiest the first weekend out. Sometimes the smarter to move is the house that's been sitting a little longer because the seller started too high, or the presentation was weak, or the photos were bad, or the listing got overlooked, or the agent missed a phone call. That is where you actually have room to ask questions, have a real conversation, and negotiate from a stronger position. That's how I help my clients in Fullerton and in North Orange County. My name is Tart with Century 21 Discovery in Fullerton. That is one of the ways I help my clients find properties and get their offers accepted. We do not always look at the active days on the market and write them off. We take a closer look, call first, get more information, and figure out why it is sitting and decide whether that reason is the real problem or just the market overreacting to it. Those are two different things. So if you're buying in Fullerton, Placentia, Anaheim, La Habra, North Orange County, and you want help figuring out which listings are sitting for bad reasons and which ones may actually be a good opportunity, text me search to 714-457-1274, and I'll help you sort through them.